We keep quoting that line. I don't know if you've ever seen the Drew Barrymore, Adam Sandler movie called Blended.
Nope.
It's a great movie, one of my favorites of all time. There's a line where the woman says, when Team Theodopoulos needs their toilet paper, the co-captain steps in, and those kids never stop crapping and go out to the outdoor, barn. That's what I think. Man, how do these little tiny chickens and little tiny rabbits put out that much output?
I've got a cat with kidney failure, and man,
Oh.
the amounts of urine that come out of that cat are truly stunning.
Yeah, I had a
So
dog.
I understand completely.
Yeah, but apart from that, let me see. I released, it's the end of the year, so my publishing company's anthology came out, Startled by Laughter. And so this is all traditional poetry in new poems in traditional forms, so villanelles, sonnets, triolets, things like that, haikus, all on the subject of humor. This to me is a fascinating concept, this idea that what somebody did 75, 90 years ago is still impacting our lives today. And in fact, Michael, remember our guest, Sean Brink? His book is like that. It's more almost a young adult novel, a Gypsy War Diary, but it's digging into how this amazing event happened like 70 years ago, and it's now coming out in these intruders in this little boy's home and all these amazing things like this shouldn't be happening. And it's because of what happened 2 generations ago. And then there's a really good one called Painting the Darkness by Robert Goddard. Similar story, but I don't see a lot of authors do this. So what drew you to this idea that there's this event 2 generations ago that's still impacting them, that they don't even know about?
Both personally and as a writer, I'm fascinated by family history. And I often think about past choices, past events, and how without certain things happening, for example, I perhaps wouldn't be here. My father, for instance, was in a very serious accident as a young man, ended up bobbing about in the Atlantic Ocean. He was in the Canadian Navy. And if, he hadn't been rescued, and had met the same, very tragic, watery grave as many of his friends, I wouldn't be here. So it's that question of, as an author, I always ask, what if? And in the case of the Sweetheart Locket, there's a little spark for that story in my own family history, in that I had a great aunt whom I knew as a very elderly woman. But she was working in England just prior to the Second World War, because I do have British family ancestry as well. And she was summoned home to Canada by her father, and of course safety, because, and as a parent myself, I understand why you would want your child, no matter how old they were, to come home and not be stuck in a war zone. But as a very elderly woman, I remember her saying, what if I'd stayed in England? How would my life have been different? And as writers, we find story ideas everywhere. And I remember just noting that down and thinking about this story and thought, what if I had a heroine as a young Canadian woman who was indeed summoned home, but unlike my great aunt, decided to stay? And what would that impact her life and also the lives of her descendants? So it does come from family history, and as always, as a writer, asking that what if question.
Right. That what if question draws everything. I thought I wrote a standalone novel, and I thought I killed the character off at the end, and my sister read it and said, well, what happens next? And I thought, well, he's dead, so nothing. And I went back and I reread it and realized I never said he is dead, and that what if sparked another 4 books. he survived that injury. And all of a sudden, instead of a standalone book, I had a 5-book series. So, and I believe you actually have a Sweetheart Locket, don't you?
Yes, I do. It is, just to give you and the listeners a little bit of context, a Sweetheart Locket is part of the tradition of sweetheart jewelry, which people serving in the armed forces in both the First World War and Second World War gave to loved ones at home. And there were lockets, bracelets, a lot of brooches as well. And I do have my very own RAF, which stands for Royal Air Force, the British Royal Air Force, Sweetheart Locket, which dates from that era.
Oh, go ahead and hold it up really close to the camera.
Okay.
Very nice.
You can see the RAF insignia on it. It's probably difficult to see on this view.
And does that open up?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
Not anymore. It did originally. But
Oh,
this is a Second World War vintage piece, and it's not from my own family, but I got it. I bought it from a US vintage dealer.
Oh, okay.
Because at the same time as I was asking this what if question, the last time I was in the UK before the pandemic, I visited the Homefront Museum in Llandudno, Wales, which is a fantastic museum with displays focused on what life was like in the home front. So I saw Sweetheart Lockets there and thought, what if?
The beer that I have is Corel Bier de Garde. It is a Belgian beer. It is amber colored, malt forward, with enough hop bitterness to balance it. But what makes it unique is this very peppery, phenolic fermentation character to it. It's actually a really delicious beer. I was surprised to find it because I haven't seen a Bier de Garde style in the Twin Cities in forever and ever. Even the one that you have, Laura, which used to be available everywhere, I haven't seen it in the Twin Cities forever and ever.
See, I'm fighting with here. Yeah, this is the closest that they came. Can you pronounce that? Abbaye de Saint Bonchen? How close?
That sounds right.
Okay.
So I chose this beer because this reading is in a French village. And I was, again, thinking, what would we be drinking there? So France is wine region, obviously. But if you get up to northern France along the Belgian border, that Belgian beer culture kind of spills over. And you have this farmhouse style called Bier de Garde, beer for storage.
That's what that means.
So cheers.
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 That has a really interesting flavor. I'd love to know how it compares to what you have.
It's probably very, very, very different.
Right. It's unfortunate. You know, we have to plan ahead because the day you sent me that list, I was actually down in the Twin Cities watching wrestle. And, you know, I didn't think to tell you that because I didn't know you'd list out early. And obviously you wouldn't have picked up 2 of each, but we could have had the same thing this time.
Well, actually, I had to get a 4-pack of this. So.
Oh, did you? So you would have had one.
I would have had one.
It occurred to me like halfway home, you know, I should have maybe checked in.
Yes. Your example, I haven't had that beer that you have in forever and ever and ever.
But you have had it.
I have had it long, long ago. I suspect it's better than the one that I have, although I really enjoy the one that I have. Yours is way more traditional.
I like it. Now, it's the kind of thing that I think would grow on me the more I drink it, but I already like it. It's got what did you say yours has, like a peppery taste?
Peppery, yeah, it's a fermentation character.
I can taste that.
Yeah.
It doesn't taste to me like beer. It's, I would almost say it's got a sweet taste to it.
Mhm.
to more of the bitter taste that I expect from beer. So this to me is a very fascinating one.
Yeah.
I would love to be able to compare what you have to what I have.
Me too.